And thank you for joining us on the news on NTA International. I am Norlin Ebel Ame, and this news is reaching you live from Abuja. First, the news headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari meets security chiefs as security architecture of the country improves with an advocacy for members of the public to sustain their cooperation with security operatives. Federal High Court in Lagos dismisses application by Akwa Ibom State Governor seeking perpetual adjournment of money laundering case against him and President of NBA. Plus, federal government develops template for tracking implementation of policies, programs and projects. And now the news. The narrative concerning the nation's security issues is fast changing, with a number of successes lately being recorded across the country. With this, security chiefs are calling on Nigerians to maintain the tempo by giving useful information promptly to agencies involved in the maintaining of law and order.
The message that is coming out of that meeting is that the armed forces of Nigeria and other security agencies will continue to work much harder to ensure that every Nigerian is secured and the territorial integrity of Nigeria is not undermined by anybody.
This was at a meeting of the nation's security chiefs presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari. Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, Chief of Air Staff, told State House correspondent Jide Onifade that the current strategy being adopted is effective and will continue to be operated. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is back in the country from Rwanda, where he represented President Muhammadu Buhari at the 25th anniversary of the liberation of Rwanda. Vice President Osinbajo joined other African leaders and heads of state at the occasion, which took place today in Kigali. The event was held to reflect on the end of the genocide in 1994. State House correspondent Jide Onifade again reports that the Vice President was accompanied on the trip by senior government officials. The Northern Governors Forum has made clarification on the federal government's suspension of Ruga settlement program. In a statement signed by NGF chairman, Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State, the forum described the varied reactions to Ruga settlement initiative as part of the beauty of democratic process. The forum urges all interest groups, especially from the northern part of the country, to remain calm and channel their views democratically, while federal government handles the matter in the best interest of all Nigerians. The statement notes that the NGF is engaging all interested parties after receiving the position of the leadership of the coalition of northern groups with a view to enlighten the public on the concept and wisdom behind federal government's decision. The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has dismissed the suit filed by the Miyetti Allah Kautal Hore socio-cultural organization challenging the validity of the Ranching and Open Grazing Prohibition Law 2017 promulgated by the Benue State government. The presiding judge, Justice Okon Abang, gave the verdict this Thursday. Olabode Arewa reports.
The organization approached the court in 2017, praying that it invalidates the law for being inconsistent with the fundamental rights of its members to freedom of movement under the Nigerian Constitution as amended. The court, on the 20th of December 2017, directed Miyetti Allah to file amended originating summons within 5 days. Their failure to comply with the order for more than 19 months prompted the defendants to pray the court to dismiss the suit for lack of diligent prosecution. Justice Okonabang, in dismissing the suit, noted that despite several reminders by the court, the plaintiffs failed to comply and gave no cogent reason for doing so. The suit was struck out with 100,000 naira cost to be paid to each of the 14 defendants in the case. Efforts to speak with counsel to Mietiala failed.
Anybody that wants to rear cattle in Benue State will follow the good law paths to ensure that branching the best practices all over the world is maintained in the state.
We're going to make sure we follow up through the courts to recover the money which they awarded in our favor.
Officials of the Benue State government, the Inspector General of Police, and the movement against Fulani occupation are defendants in the streets in Abuja, Labodarewa. NTA News.
And still on judiciary, the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has dismissed an application by the governor of Akwa Ibom State, Emmanuel Udom, seeking indefinite adjournment of the money laundering charge brought against him and president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Paul Usoro. Vera Chungba reports that Justice Rilwan Aikawa had ordered the immediate trial of the defendants in the suit.
The Nigerian Bar Association President Paul Usoro is facing allegation of money laundering to the tune of 1.4 billion naira alongside Akwa Ibom State Governor Emmanuel Udom and others. Governor Udom has asked the court to adjourn the case sine die, that is indefinitely, so as to allow the Lagos Division of the Court of Appeal determine the appeal he filed against the ruling of the court. He is challenging the jurisdiction of the court to entertain the charge against Usoro on the ground that his name was mentioned as one of the persons who allegedly conspired with Usoro to launder the 1.4 billion naira. He argued that by mentioning his name as a sitting governor, the charge has become invalid as he is immune from criminal prosecution as a governor. EFCC counsel argued that adjourning the trial indefinitely will amount to stay of proceedings under Section 306 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. Justice Aikawa dismissed the application and ordered trial of the defendants. Meanwhile, a witness, Udom Ndogesit, had told the court how she facilitated the payment of 700 million naira into Paul Usoro's account. In Lagos, Viera Chumuba, NTA News.
Away from judiciary, the federal government is developing a template for tracking the implementation of policies, programs and projects approved by the federal and state governments. To the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, in a message to the Southwest Regional Meeting of Secretaries to the State Government and Permanent Secretaries of the Cabinet Affairs Offices, explained that this approach will enrich policy and decision-making process, which will translate into efficient service delivery. The Senate has called for the increased budgetary allocation to primary healthcare system in Nigeria and introduction of modern technologies in the treatment of patients. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nko reports.
We convened into a closed-door session. 1 hour later, the executive session ends and business of the day commenced with primary healthcare system in focus.
On the workings of the Senate.
A motion from Senator Luremi Tinubu and 105 others highlighted the disturbing state of primary healthcare facilities in Nigeria. Senators argued that the poor funding of primary healthcare in Nigeria is responsible for the vast stretching of the secondary and tertiary healthcare institutions.
Direct the Ministry of Employment to put in place policies to ensure that every employer of labor has health insurance package for employees.
The federal government will release money through the budgetary provision, and that money will not be used for the primary purpose of equipping and maintaining the primary health care centers.
Former governors in the Senate who were once in charge of these health facilities proffer solutions.
The National Financial Intelligence Unit has made an observation that local government funds have been hijacked by the state governors.
Unless we continue to create an avenue for it to be continually maintained, of course the whole thing will collapse again.
It should not be made to just be affordable, and it should also be made free.
There is also need to bring their operations, management, and administration under one roof.
This is something that we need to oversight very well. We must ensure that everything is streamlined.
Consideration of health matters continued on the floor as Senator Ibrahim Oloriegbe drew the attention of the Senate to the urgent need to strengthen the National Health Insurance Scheme and for NHIS to direct HMOs to pay health providers outstanding debts within 3 months.
The enrollees complain of being frequently told to purchase drugs outside of the hospital under the guise of either the drug being out of stock or not covered under the scheme.
Senator Emmanuel Oke Jeff drew the attention of the Senate to the recent tanker explosion in Benue State and the need to curb these accidents in Nigeria.
Fire killing over 50 people and over 100 others secured various degrees of burns and injuries.
Educate our people that whenever they see fuel products, be it AGO, petrol, or even gases, that they should stay away as far as possible.
Senate observed a minute silence in honor of 2 former senators from Bauchi State who died recently, Senators Ibrahim Lame, Garba Gamawa, and those who lost their lives in the Benue tanker explosion. President of the Senate Ahmed Lawan granted audience to the Lebanese ambassador to Nigeria, Hossam Diab, and his United Arab Emirates counterpart, Ambassador Fahad El Tafak, during which they agreed to strengthen their parliamentary relations. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Nkwo, NTA News.
Still on the National Assembly, principal officers of the House of Representatives have been constituted with the announcement of names of new majority leaders by the Speaker, Femi Bajabiamila. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali reports.
The announcements of the names of majority leaders was greeted with applause from House members.
Members of the House of Representatives, APC caucus, hereby endorse the following honorable members as principal officers. Honorable Al-Hassan Ado Dogwa, House Leader. Mohammed Tahir Mongunu, Chief Whip. Honorable Inkuruka Onyejocha, the Deputy Chief Whip. And Honorable Peter Apata Singh, Deputy Leader.
By these developments, principal officers of the House of Representatives, consisting majority and minority leaders, have been fully constituted as required. Following Wednesday's breach of House rules during plenary, the House has set up an ad hoc committee to carry out an investigation. Thursday's plenary featured the adoption of 2 motions and the need for relevant government agencies to assess victims of recent flood disaster in Lagos and Katsina states.
Over 10,000 houses across the 3 local government areas of my constituency cannot be put to use by the owners due to this flooding.
House members also called on authorities to look into emoluments of judges with a view to eliminate corrupt practices in the judiciary. From the National Assembly, Lami Ali, NTA News.
And on INEC, the media coverage given to the 2019 general elections was a clear demonstration of patriotism. Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, stated this in a stakeholders meeting with the media in reviewing the conduct of the 2019 general elections in Abuja. Mia Ogidi reports.
Pleasantries are never in short supply in gatherings like this, because the Fourth Estate is quite a busy one. So, all is done in arrears. Being gatekeepers, these media chiefs avert wars, calm rising tensions, set agenda for the government, all in the interest of the nation. The 2019 elections were even more tasking in the delivery of these national assignments, where perception and truth competing for supremacy with the penetration of the social media. 2,131 domestic and foreign journalists from 202 media outfits were on the field, and their experiences will enrich the idea bank of the INEC.
The media did not disappoint before, during, and after the election. We were never at any point in time found wanting.
the live coverage on television, radio, online newspapers, and live streaming on other platforms, free of charge, gratis. The Commission didn't pay for this.
Such kindness and patriotism from the fourth power rekindles the spirit of comradeship in the INEC chairman.
I want to assure you, Larry, that spirit of making our country work for all Nigerians is still in us, and it will remain in me forever.
2 months from now, all the contributions from the stakeholders will be in a compendium for a better outing in 2023. Mie Ogidi, NTA News.
This is the news on NTA International, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria. The news continues in just a moment. After the break, please stay with us.
The National Council for Art and Culture wishes to inform stakeholders in the art and culture sector that the 49th edition of the National Technical Committee meeting of the National Festival of Art and Culture, NAFES, is scheduled to hold as follows. Venue, Heritage Hotel, Benin City, Edo State. Date, 8th to 12th of July 2019. Time, 10 a.m. daily. All commissioners of culture in the 36 states and all directors of culture, art councils and history bureau in the 36 states and the FCT are expected at the meeting. Announcer, Otumba Olusegun Rushewe, Director General, National Council for Art and Culture.
With heavy hearts, we announce the death of Honorable Haske Francis Hanania, which occurred on Tuesday, 25th June 2019. The funeral arrangement is as follows. Friday, 5th July, corpse leaves National Hospital Abuja to Yola by air and then proceeds to Hong local government area for lying in state at General Hanania's residence. Time, 7 a.m. Saturday, 6th July, funeral service at LCCN number 1 Hong and interment at Central Cemetery Hong. Time, 10 a.m. Announcer H.A. Hanania for the family.
Thank you for staying with us. The Independent National Electoral Commission says it will take a critical look at some issues that will engender better democratic practices towards a more credible pathway to elections and the electoral practices. This followed the presentation of the post-2019 General Elections Review Roundtable by the Center for Transparency, Advocacy and Accredited Local Election Observer Group. Timothy Yusuf reports.
The 2019 general elections have come and gone. Stakeholders have, however, continued to review, appraise the outcomes, mistakes made, the successes, lessons learned, and of course rejig the process for the forthcoming Kogi and Bayelsa States governorship elections, and ultimately the 2023 general elections, which is about 1,200 days away. Executive Director of the Center for Transparency Advocacy, Faith Wadichi, championed this gathering of stakeholders with the presentation of the 2019 general elections final report. The report centers on 13 key recommendations, commending INEC for the conduct of a credible exercise.
We feel that the political class, being the overall beneficiaries of an electoral process, they should actually be the ones in the forefront of making our elections better.
The recommendations made are essentially to make amends for areas of concern by the stakeholders gathered under this roof. INEC on its part has promised readiness to make amends, especially as the Commission deliberates on continuous voter registration, whether or not to deregister non-performing political parties and the need for improved internal democracy within political parties.
We are open in relation to all these engagements and all the recommendations that have been made so far.
The November 16 governorship elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states, as well as other off-season elections, are expected to witness more improvement before the 2023 general elections. In Abuja, Timothy Yusuf, NTA News.
Away from INEC, a combined team of firefighters have successfully contained the raging fire from an NNPC pipeline right of way at Ijegun in Lagos. The source of the fire was attributed to bunkering on the pipeline at Fire Junction by suspected vandals who were siphoning fuel into tankers. Paul Omokago reports that so far 2 dead bodies have been recovered.
Chikudi is a victim of the early morning inferno at Fire Junction, Ijegun, Lagos. His commercial vehicle, which he got on hire purchase, was among 31 vehicles gutted by the fire.
It's vandalizers that caused this fire that raised the whole bus here. They are vandalizing the fuel. They have carried almost 13 trucks out. And the two that they want to carry out is the one that is burning here now.
Director General of Lagos State Emergency Management Agency and an information officer from the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, confirmed to NTA that 12 vandals who were affected by the fire were rescued.
I need to warn the citizen in this environment that there are a lot of inflammables in here. They need to cooperate with us. They need to be vigilant. This fire will go on long time. However, I can assure you that we are on top of it. It will not damage any properties again because we have localized it. We've curtailed the spread.
We've shutting down the source of supply from the main source of supply, then asking them to shut down the valves, closest valves around there. And until when the fire goes out or is weakened, before we can be able to put it out entirely.
Investigations continue with strong security presence at the scene of incident. Apart from the vehicles burnt and 2 casualties, no building in the area was affected. In Lagos, Paul Mukago, NTA News.
Beneficiaries of the Niger Delta Presidential Amnesty Program are set to use the technology incubation centers across the country for training and empowerment in the agriculture and allied sector. This hopefully will improve their expertise in various areas of specialization. This is sealed with the signing of Memorandum of Understanding between the National Board for Technology Incubation, NBTI, and the Amnesty Office to use 23 technology incubation centers allocated to it for cluster manufacturing by beneficiaries of the Amnesty Program. This partnership with NBTI aimed at enhancing the achievement of the goal of empowering the beneficiaries is also to ensure that the beneficiaries register their products with the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC.
We appreciate your partnership with the Amnesty Office in achieving the goal of empowering the Amnesty delegates.
NPTI is benefiting from the fact that we are going to use the opportunity to source for additional technologies within the area so that we can convert them into knowledge-driven and sustainable enterprises in such a way that the trainees will in future become key players in the nation's economy.
The Ministry of Science and Technology sees this partnership as a value addition to the lives of the youth of the Niger Delta and has urged the partnering agencies to logically implement the provisions of the to be beneficial not only to the Niger Delta but the entire nation.
The facilities of the National Board for Technology Incubation and at the same time add value to the lives of the delegates of the Niger Delta Amnesty Program. This will in no doubt further improve on the security situation of the Niger Delta region.
The 23 MBTI Technology Incubation Centers approved for the Amnesty Program are located in Edo, Abia, Imo, Ondo, Rivers, Cross River, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, and Delta States. Let's now join Ado Adamu also on news from other parts of the globe.
Report from Sudan indicates that direct talks between military rulers and protest leaders have resumed, with some progress being made on the release of political prisoners. Negotiations had been stalled since May because of the disagreement over the composition of the top body that would lead the country during a transition period. The African Union and Ethiopia mediators hope that the two sides would agree on how to share positions on the Sovereign Council. The opposition groups also want the deathly raid on their sit-in last month investigated. The resumption of dialogue restores hope for a transition to civilian role. After a first round of fresh talk on Wednesday, the African Union mediator said Sudan's military rulers had agreed to release all political prisoners. He, however, did not offer further details or specify how many people were affected. And from Russia, report says the main cause of the deadly incident on submersible which killed 14 crew on Monday was a fire in the battery compartment. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu also said the top-secret military craft was nuclear-powered, but the reactor had been isolated from the fire. In another development, North Korea has accused the U.S. of being hell-bent on hostile acts, despite a recent agreement between the two countries to resume nuclear talks. Pyongyang delegation to the United Nations said on Wednesday that the U.S. was obsessed with sanctions. This comes days after the country's two leaders held historic meeting in the heavily fortified, demilitarized zone which divides the two Koreas. Donald Trump became the first sitting U.S. president to set foot in the North. And after talks that lasted for almost an hour, the pair agreed to set up teams to resume stalled negotiations on denuclearization. And that is it on this segment. Thank you for your time.